So obviously, the ceasefire is on, kind of. I mean, there have been some attacks since the ceasefire was declared. I mean, that's nothing too out of the ordinary. You know, every ceasefire kind of comes with an asterisk, as we'll see
Hmm.
in this
Especially with
segment.
these folks.
Exactly, exactly. But look at that beautiful, look at that majestic photo in Time magazine.
Oh,
His
wow.
triumph. Look at that. Now that's a
He hit the
president.
big time.
That looks like a president, right? Look at that. They're going to put him on Mount Rushmore. His
Yeah.
triumph, cover of Time. The living Israeli hostages held in Gaza have been freed under the first phase of Donald Trump's peace plan, alongside a Palestinian prisoner release. The deal may become a signature achievement of Trump's second term and could mark a strategic turning point for the Middle East. Or Israel could just break it like they always do, but we'll see. We'll
Mm.
see. How the Trump administration sealed the deal. Sealed the Gaza ceasefire deal. This is the write up in Time. Donald Trump has always believed the art of the deal could solve anything. See, you see where this is going. It was his
Hmm.
creed in business, then in politics. The conviction that every conflict, no matter how intractable, can be negotiated into submission. So when he set his sights on one of his trickiest second term goals, ending the war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, he didn't turn to diplomats or generals. He enlisted two men who spoke his language. Steve Witkoff, a fellow real estate developer turned special envoy, and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law and the family's bridge to the Middle East.
Cat was named Vagina.
Yeah, who's been strangely sidelined this entire term until now.
Until now.
You know, if he was such an expert, you could have enlisted his help 9 months ago. You know, it could have saved, maybe 10,000 lives. But hey, no big deal, right? They're just Palestinians. After painstaking efforts, Witkoff and Kushner emerged with the framework of an accord that promises, at least for now, to quiet one of the world's most destabilizing conflicts. The deal could become a signature achievement of Trump's second term, fulfilling his campaign vow to stop a war that has killed tens of thousands while returning Israeli captives to their families and beginning the arduous work of rebuilding Gaza. It could also mark a strategic turning point for the Middle East. Now, if you notice the ellipses there, obviously I'm pulling different parts of this article. To their credit, for the sake of fairness, they do put in the caveat that it's going to be challenging to keep this ceasefire going. But they are very hopeful and very high on Trump for trying. Israel already emerging from a year of history-bending military operations. Oh, history-bending. Is that how you would describe them? I never heard that.
Kind of cool what they did. Actually.
Yeah, history-bending. What the hell does that mean? History-bending military. What the fuck does that even mean? History-bending military operations. Crippling Hamas in Gaza.
This is really, I never read these things anymore except for this purpose, work. Yeah, that's how the propaganda works, man. That's how it's all word choices, subliminal programming.
Yeah. The Nazis with their history-bending use of the railroads.
They bent history already.
Yeah, they bent it. They bent history.
History-bending use of the blitzkrieg.
Yeah, right, exactly. Israel already emerging from a year of history-bending military operations, crippling Hamas in Gaza, decapitating Hezbollah's command structure, and setting back Iran's nuclear program, now stands at the threshold of something larger. So they frame that very positively. If the peace holds, the region could enter a new era defined less by conflict than by the possibility of transformation, including the rebuilding of a post-Hamas Gaza and the normalization of Israeli relations with Saudi Arabia. The breakthrough in recent days offers a chance to reassert America's ability to shape events beyond its borders. Ending a war that has caused extraordinary suffering would be a victory on its own, but it represents a measure of redemption for Trump, whose critics have accused him of abdicating America's leadership role abroad with an America First, quote-unquote, posture that upended global alliances. And once again, look at that photo. Look at the way they presented Donald Trump. He's going to be really happy with this, isn't he? Well, kind of. He had
how'd they get a shot of him without the yellow hair?
Well, he complains about that actually in a Truth Social post at 1:36 a.m. last night. He says, Time magazine wrote a relatively good story about me, but the picture may be the worst of all time. They disappeared my hair. and then had something floating on top of my head that looked like a floating crown, but an extremely small one. Really weird. I never liked taking pictures from underneath angles. Yeah, I could see why. But this is a super bad picture and deserves to be called out. What are they doing and why? Tough man to please.
It looks like the photographer is going to tit fuck my neck.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
No, no. Actually, this is what a fucking moron he is. Yeah. They're trying to make him look like he has gravitas.
Right. They're trying to make him look big.
They're trying to make him look respectable. Mm-hmm. Well, and even the gray hair. They're trying to make him look less clownish.
Yeah, you're supposed to look like, they're trying to make you look like a president. They did this one other time. I forget what it was, where he complained about the picture. Remember, he complained about a portrait of him because they made him look, I guess, too statesman-like. And it really was not bad. I mean, it wasn't an accurate rendering of him, but it was a flattering rendering of him because it made him look more serious and more worthy of the position.
You remember those old McDonald's commercials where there'd be like a little plot with like Grimace and the Hamburglar. Yeah. I want to look like I would have been in one of those commercials.
I want to look like that. Exactly. But all in all, very gushing praise from Time Magazine. What about NBC News? What about enemy of the people, fake news NBC? Trump takes a victory lap as Gaza peace deal is signed from the politics desk. So this is from the board, so to speak, at NBC News. And what do they write? First of all, they summarize his trip to the Knesset, which we'll get to in a later segment. The Knesset, the Israeli parliament, greeted Trump with a standing ovation when he spoke there. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi gave Trump his country's highest civilian honor later in the day. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East, Trump said in his remarks. If that is indeed the case, Trump may well yet win the Nobel Peace Prize he seeks. So there you go, NBC.
Well, that's the house style for both Newsweek and Time. It always has that kind of formulation. If then. They always end with an if-then proposition.
If then. So there you have NBC News kind of unofficially submitting Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. What about Dan Goldman? Remember Dan Goldman, who ran against Yuleen Yu for New York's 10th district? She was the progressive in the race that he beat out. He beat her because during Trump's first term, Goldman held Trump accountable. He supported the Trump impeachment and helped the lawyers. So he's here to fight Trump. Well, let's see what kind of fight he's putting up. Here's Don Jr., who apparently ran into him on a coke binge in the Bahamas. Thank you, Congressman. They met in the Bahamas, I guess. Thank you, Congressman Dan Goldman, for your kind words today when you saw me about the incredible job my father did delivering historic peace to the Middle East and bringing the hostages home. Safe travels back from the Bahamas. So I guess they ran into each other on vacation in the Bahamas, and Goldman said, hey, good job, Donald Trump. So there's your resistance lib Democrat. There you go. Even he's fallen in line. It's not just Dan Goldman. Joe Biden and Bill Clinton praised Trump for Gaza peace deal. Joe Biden put out a statement. I'm deeply grateful for relief. For the last living 20 hostages have been through unimaginable hell, finally reunited with their families and loved ones, and for civilians in Gaza we experienced immeasurable loss. And
I know it's hard because Netanyahu's like it's a fucking leader.
It's a fucking leader. Thomas Friedman was right. He's like a sideways jumping lemur. Finally nailed him down. Finally, Donald Trump finally put a net on that Safaka lemur. The road to this deal was not easy. My administration worked relentlessly to bring hostages home. Right. The reporting has already come out. You never even asked for a ceasefire. You never even asked for one. To get relief to Palestinian civilians and end the war. Those are all lies. I commend President Trump and his team for their work to get a renewed ceasefire deal over the finish line. Not going to read the rest of that. Free Palestine. Bill Clinton, here he comes in. Statement from President Clinton on the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. So let's see what Billy Jeff has to say. The horrors of the October 7, 2023 attack on Israel and the conflict they reignited have resulted in unbearable human loss. It has been hard to watch and nearly impossible to rationalize. I'm grateful that a ceasefire has taken hold, that the last 20 living hostages have been freed, and that desperately needed aid has begun to flow into Gaza. President Trump and his administration, Qatar, and other regional actors deserve great credit for keeping everyone engaged until the agreement was reached. That's right. They deserve great credit. And Donald Trump appreciated that he gave him that great credit. The president told reporters Monday that he thought Clinton's post was very, very nice, actually. Trump said he'd always gotten along with him. He used to be a friend of mine, came to my wedding. He noticed, he noted former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton came too, though he did not mention his 2016 Democratic presidential rival by name. So, Michael Tracy, who is an acquaintance of the show, I suppose, actually had a pretty good take on this, I thought, and I think this kind of nails it. The reason hardcore pro-Israel people like Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden love Trump's deal so much is that it was brokered through a nominally multilateral format, which they fetishize and ultimately provides that the U.S. will administer Gaza on Israel's behalf. Figures like the Clintons and Biden are highly attuned to international opinion, care about multilateral institutions, and also ardently support Israel. They recognize the perpetuation of the Gaza rampage, was sinking Israel's international standing and politically unsustainable. So now the U.S. comes in, declares that it will govern Gaza through some sort of nominally multilateral consortium, and takes some of the heat off Israel while pursuing the long-term war objectives that Israel itself was not going to accomplish militarily, like eradicating Hamas. Imposing the formula that was cooked up by Tony Blair's think tank by way of Jared Kushner in concert with regional Arab partners, quote unquote, is very much in line with what the Clintons and Biden would have ideally envisioned anyway, even if Trump is the one effectuating it. It allows Israel to regroup, free up resources, and potentially move to finish the job with Iran, which is more the area where Trump's personal proclivities come in, not caring about multilateral institutions, destroying the JCPOA, which is the Iran nuclear deal, and backing Israeli religious fanatics. Yeah, that's about right. And I think that is why the media and the sort of old guard establishment that Trump unseated or displaced, quote unquote, is happy with this. I think it's pretty obvious that Israel was not going to achieve its military objectives, at least as currently stated. Their actual objective was to eradicate Gaza. And the more they did that, the more heat they drew to themselves. And so the United States stepping in and say, hey, you know what? We'll kind of take things from here. We'll set up a governing body. We'll essentially go back to a pre-October 7th status quo with 500,000 or so fewer Palestinians and a completely devastated Gaza Strip that now needs to be rebuilt with our supervision and perhaps our investment. And so I think that does very much explain why the old guard kind of likes this. It's nicer, right? It tries to put a nicer face on the genocide, which is a very Democrat thing to do. It's a very WEF kind of thing to do. Hey, let the technocrats take this over because you guys are just making this a little too barbaric to the point where it's unsustainable. So let's put a nice face on this. Let's put a diplomatic face on this, and that is essentially what happened. And as for the media, as I said in the intro to the show, this is the Syria moment from the first term all over again. Okay, Trump is now executing the foreign policy that the establishment wants, so now we're going to extend an olive branch to him. Now he gets puff pieces in Time magazine. He gets NBC News floating him for a Nobel Prize because he is executing the proper United States imperial foreign policy. Whether the peace deal holds, well, that remains to be seen. Donald Trump seems to want it to because he knows this is politically very good for him, since now he's finally getting some good press from outlets like Time and NBC. So here he is. This is audio that the White House released from Air Force One because a reporter raised the question, hey, you know, Netanyahu's not exactly fully committed to implementing a complete and permanent ceasefire. What do you have to say about that? And Trump repeatedly insists, no, it's over. It's over. The war is over.
Netanyahu, the prime minister, has not gone so far as to say the war is over. In your view, is the war between Israel and Hamas over?
The war is over. The war is over. Okay.
It's over.
You understand that?
Mr. President, is the ceasefire going to hold? Are you confident the ceasefire will hold?
Say it.
Are you confident that the ceasefire is going to hold?
I think so. I think it's going to hold. I think people are a lot of reasons why it's going to hold, but I think people are tired of it. It's been centuries, okay? Not just recent, it's been centuries. I think people are tired of it.
Okay, well, your lips to God's ears, except, 5 Palestinians killed by Israeli forces in Gaza, despite ceasefire. That came out this morning in Al Jazeera. Jordan Yule says, already today, Israel has conducted a drone strike on Khan Yunis in Gaza, shot and wounded 2 others near Khan Yunis, killed 5 Palestinians in Gaza City, fired on and wounded several others near Jabalia, all in violation of the quote-unquote ceasefire. So, we're covering the reactions to the peace deal, quote-unquote, but, a lot of these segments today are going to come with the caveat and the asterisk that, this could break at any moment. Israel's MO.
It already broke.
Yeah.
That's the story I added at the last minute.
Yeah. Like Israel's MO historically has been to agree to ceasefires and then to break them and blame the Palestinians. And so that's what we could be seeing more of, unfortunately, which explains a lot of why the pro-Palestine people have not been celebrating and bowing and kissing the feet of Donald Trump, which we'll get a little bit more into as the live stream here goes on. But as you can see, when you execute the foreign policy, you're in the club. And so Donald Trump, for now at least, back in good standing with all of his old foes in the fake news media and the Democrat Party.
A lot of people talk about the deep bond between members of Skull and Bones. That's nothing compared to the bond between members of Epstein's tweens. And me and Donald are in that club for sure.
It's a brotherhood.
It's a brotherhood. It's a bond you can't break.
When Trump bombed Syria, there was this moment. It was insane. It was Brian Williams who started talking about Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, he started quoting Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, the beauty of our weapons. It was insane. Van Jones, he became president tonight. That see people who read the media as ideological. I mean, sure, I think most of the people who go into the media are like in this house we lawn sign people, for the most part. But in the end, their ideology is star fucking. They like access. They like to be insiders. They're quite the opposite of what a press should be. Adversarial to power, no matter who's in power. They're the opposite. They want to be servile to power, no matter who is in power. I've talked a lot about how, I used to be a corporate media junkie. And, it's like the Matrix. Every now and then something makes you realize something's wrong. That black cat went by twice. You know what a moment like that was for me, where like, if I really wanted to pursue it, I could have figured this out 20 years earlier. Bush, there was all this reporting about the Supreme Court case, about the disputed election with Al Gore, and it was very clear that any way you sliced it, his brother tipped the scales in Florida, and that this was a rigged election by any meaningful definition. Chad's butterfly ballots, all that shit aside, just purging all of these black people from the voter rolls by lowering the standards for doing that is rigging the election by itself. There was no question it was a rigged election. As soon as the Supreme Court made its announcement, outlets like Time, Newsweek became immediately completely incurious about the whole subject.
Exactly.
They dropped that. Not only did they drop the subject, they started writing glowing puff pieces about the management style of George Bush and the kind of White House he runs. And I remember even then that me being like, well, that's weird. All of a sudden he's President Bush and he keeps bankers hours and it's awesome. It's all great.
Same kind of deal, right?
Like yesterday he was the guy who rigged the election, right? And then like you threw a switch. So that was definitely one of those moments that made me go, but it took me like 15 more years to really catch up with the implications of that. This is one of those things, man. It's another example of that. They don't like being at odds with the administration. Like, in the end, they'll be happy to bend the knee in exchange for access, status, and being in the club. That's all they really care about. If you go along with the foreign policy establishment in this way, and that really shows you what they really care about, because those are the things you cannot violate. You cannot violate the foreign policy doctrine. You can have homeless lined up from Seattle to Chicago. They don't give a fuck. They'll talk about, well, these are honest debates about economics that people of goodwill can have.
Right.
If you fuck them on foreign policy, that's it. You're crazy cuckoo pants. You're beyond the pale. So yeah, no, they offered them that with Syria, and this is a good example. If anyone's ever doubted when we've said, you think you're never going to see a day where Donald Trump's in the club, he's being hugged by Michelle Obama, you think that'll never happen? Here you go.
Yeah, here you go. After all of that, for now at least, they're normalizing him because as long as you execute the foreign policy program, then you're normalized in their view. Really doesn't matter very much what else you do. And yes, they are starfuckers. They would rather normalize him than ostracize him. And they gave him that chance in the first term, and he didn't follow through. They're giving him that chance again here. It's a little more complicated this time because you are completely dependent on what Netanyahu feels like he can get away with. It's clear that Trump wants this to stick because he understands what a political boon this is for him. He's getting good press for the first time ever, right? So, like, he understands that this is a big opportunity for him. And so he doesn't want the Israelis to fuck him. But, you know, the exact nature of their relationship is sort of shrouded in mystery, largely because of the Epstein files, I would speculate. But that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. You know, we know how much money he took from Miriam Adelson. We're going to get to that a bit later. But he is dependent on them not to fuck him here. And there's just no telling how that's going to go. There just ultimately is no way of knowing.
They're gonna fuck him, and indications based on some of what was breaking before we went on is they're not going to waste any time fucking him on this.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Please clap.